Hi, I'm Helen Kolenko, Senior Educator based at the Felixstowe office. Today's workshop is going to centre around the play skills for children with autism. It would seem that in our educational settings, both schools and preschools, we are seeing more children with a diagnosis of autism. For many of the children we are supporting in these learning environments with a diagnosis of autism, or those that we even suspect are on this spectrum, we frequently note their access and participation in a play environment is markedly different to that of their peers. So what is it about play that is so critical for a child's development, where we would need to consider and understand it in a more deeper sense for these children? This workshop endeavours to examine the role of play, its purpose, the stages of play, and how we might develop play skills for these children through more targeted approaches. So how do we define play? For some of us, our early training in early childhood began around Piaget. And I think the definition of play, as defined by Piaget, clearly articulates the role of play in all of our lives. Even in our own adult lives, we play. We buy new gadgets, in my case, a pie maker or an electric bike. Play is a lifelong way in which we learn. It stretches us, supports us to risk-take, and ultimately allows us to enjoy new experience. As Jordan Libby articulated, play is a diverse and complex behaviour that may be viewed as central to the normal development of children. As we look at the other three key areas of play, we can see how it interconnects with the learning process, the social process, and ultimately the emotional process. It is through play that children learn to interact, build friendships, and relate to their peers. And as we know that children who are autistic, this is their greatest challenge, and it can lead to social isolation and others becoming more aware of the differences. So what are the key elements of play? Play is pleasurable and enjoyable, even if you do fall off the bike or you ruin the pie in the pie maker. Play has no goal imposed on it from the outside. It is purely up to the player. Play is spontaneous and voluntary. Play involves some active engagement on the part of the player. As we develop as players, we know that there are several characteristics and patterns that emerge around play. We know that play follows a predictable pattern of development. It is influenced by culture and tradition. It becomes more social as the child grows. Interesting, the number of playmates decrease with age, as do the number of play activities. Play becomes more gender-based as the child grows. It becomes more organised. It turns from active to passive as the child grows. And play is predictive of a child's adjustment to the world. This is a continuing challenge for children with autism, as they do not make the same progressions through these patterns of play, which then significantly affects their ability to adjust, change, go with the flow, and cope in an ever-changing world. They become more static than dynamic learners. So, how does play develop? From newborn to the fully developed adult, we know that each developmental stage needs to be attained in order for the child to develop the skills to be successful learners, as well as social and emotional beings. So much of our ability to connect relies on being team players, understanding and playing by the rules, coping with change and disappointment, such as losing, not being chosen first, or being the lead all the time. So looking at the first stage of play, which is exploratory play, it involves the child using all of their senses. They will examine objects by looking, touching, either with their hands or their mouths, listening and moving the items, to learn how they can influence the world around them. It starts with the carer exploring their hair, body and faces, then extends to rattles, soft toys, and musical mobiles. This stimulates the brain connections, and it is clearly part of the early cognitive development of the child. So when looking at imitation, it is typically acquired naturally. Typically developing infants are born to be able to imitate. By imitating, babies build a catalogue of behaviours. Social memory allows babies to repeat behaviour again hours later. Most kids are born with a brain that helps them intuitively learn to observe social information around them. It is their social radar. Imitation skills and typical developmental imitation is a critical skill for learning motor skills, learning social skills, learning communication skills, learning new and more complex play skills with toys as well as a managed play. And early imitation games such as peekaboo, waving or clapping are soon a favourite activity of many young babies and are often initiated by them as well. So as we look through the other developmental stages, at around 9 months to 2 years, we should start to see some independent play skills. That is, they're starting to build a repertoire with some toys that has a purpose to it. Maybe with a doll, maybe with a car, maybe with blocks. And then as they merge into more pretend play, we see those toys having even more purpose. And they can even then start to use things that are not real to become things, like a box for a bed or a truck. Or they can put a pot on their head to pretend it is a hat. Moving through yet, we see at 3 years of age, they're developing more peer interest in play. It's more reciprocal. Then there is more cooperative play, where they can join another, follow the child's lead, be the leader, which then merges into those group games, where you're actually seeing more rules imposed on the games. And children at 5 can usually manage losing, winning, waiting their turn in these situations. And by 8 years of age, the stage of being able to play in organised sport is taken to a much higher level. If you can think of these children who are on the spectrum, we can see that some of them, even at 4, are still back at that exploratory stage and have not yet learnt to even imitate. So how hard is it for them to interact in cooperative play, group play, and even in organised sport, when they're still very much back at the exploratory level of developmental play? When we look at the various types of play that we would expect a typically developing child to participate in, it is also developmental and fluid. Ultimately, for a preschool-aged child, we would be expecting to see cooperative play emerging, as well as the social aspects of play prominent in the play sequences we are observing. Children developmentally go from solitary participants to social beings, where they can interact successfully with a peer or even in a group. As we can see on the slide, we can go in and out of all these different types of play. At times we can be solitary players. At times we can be cooperative. We can even play in unstructured group activities that doesn't necessarily have a defined outcome without becoming anxious. We can then pretend an object is something else. But most of all, we are developing those social interactions with a peer or even in a group, which is really important if we are to be successful participators. So what are the key ingredients that make up play that children need to add to their repertoire? They need to have social interactions, more than just isolatory and parallel. They need to have developed the skills to see them playing cooperatively, taking the lead as well as following the lead. They need to have good communication skills, which see them using their language to interact, share their ideas, manage conflict, and use negotiation skills when necessary. And of course, they need imagination to take that pretend play level to real-time play, e.g. like turning a box into a bus, or pretending they're the mum, the driver of the car, or the teacher. This takes the play to the next level. These three key aspects are all critical to developing as a functional and successful participator. To develop these skills, there are 6 core developmental capacities that children need to build in order to have the right ingredients to engage in purposeful play. If we start with attending, this is where we're aware of others and how we stay connected to what is going on, how we fit in, which then ensures that we are relating to the play, understanding its purpose, where it's going, where it could go. By contributing using logical and creative ideas and communicating these ideas, assists the play to continue. If others are building a boat and they want to make it into a train and take over and keep trying to change the original idea, then it is highly likely that others will leave the play or conflict will arise. The ability to use problem-solving interactions, that is, negotiation and compromise, is more likely to achieve good outcomes for everyone who is participating in that play sequence. Children again need to develop these 6 core capacities to engage in successful play experience. And we know that children with autism do not often have these 6 core capacities developed to be able to do this. In the resources section, you will find a link to a video entitled Typical Play of a 5-year-old. Having now looked at the skills and understandings that a child needs to develop in order to play, what is it we generally know about a child with autism that might possibly be a barrier for them in building this capacity to become active participants in play? We know they have unusual eye gaze. This can be difficult when trying to connect with others. We know they have difficulty shifting their attention, particularly from their obsessions. We know that they have a lack of joint attention. We'll talk about that a bit later. We know they have weak imitation skills and that they have ritualised object use. So they might line up the toys rather than engage with the toy for the purpose that it was designed. And we know that they often avoid social interaction with peers. It is worth noting that as part of the diagnosis and assessment criteria for autism, the following is an indicator of autism as part of the DSM-5: a lack of varied, spontaneous, make-believe play or social imitative play appropriate to the developmental level. So how does their play differ? We often see strong resistance to those who enter or disrupt their behaviours and their patterns or rituals. Toys and objects are used in a rote or rigid way. There's a lot of repetitive play, which indicates limited understanding of how to use the toy for its intended purpose. They can engage in some basic pretend play, more through rote learning and scripts. And sometimes there is no indication that they even want to play. They prefer to be or play alone, or do not have the social or communication skills to seek out others. All of the above behaviours limit and restrict their capacity to learn through play. Not being able to extend their play skills, use their imagination and have social intent can only mean that they can only engage in basic play sequences. Again, their play is seen as static, even though they know everything there is to know about the solar system, numbers and the alphabet, and can repeat many movie lines. This is not functional and does not go beyond the or obsession. Evidence and research indicates that these children have preferred play activities, and I'm sure as I read through these, nothing will be a surprise to you. We know that they love computers and iPads. They love watching videos, the same ones. They know all the scripts. They love looking at books. I had a young boy who loved reading a medical dictionary. We know that they love completing puzzles, that they're often quite visual. They love using motor manipulatives such as Lego, and they will spend hours building without even pausing for a moment. They do like playing physical games as well, for example, chasey. As you can see, these activities do not rely on true play partners, and even in a game of chasey, the interactions do not rely on communicating, sharing, devising, or imagination. But often when asking parents about interactions with peers, they will see this game as a clear indication of social and appropriate and connected play. So why is joint play so difficult? We know that children develop joint play skills where they can follow another's play, add to it, accept the changes that may occur in the play sequences. But for many children with autism, joint play can be extremely difficult to achieve or even to understand because they have problems in imitation, interaction and joint attention. They have difficulty accepting direction from others and the resulting exposure anxiety that this can cause. We have seen many children become highly anxious if the direction of the play changes in any way. They have problems with flexibility. They have a set way of playing with something, like we talked about lining up the cars. If you move one of those cars, it is likely to cause much distress. And of course, they have problems with imagination. They don't have a lot of pretend play. We also know they have problems with meaning, difficulty imagining that items can represent other things. For example, a stick could be an aeroplane. They also have difficulties with generalisation, so applying a skill learnt in one setting to a different context. We know that they have receptive difficulties as well as expressive language difficulties. If you're not understanding what is being told to you and you're then not able to express your confusion over this adds another layer to joining the play. And of course, these are the children who have difficulty with sensory processing. And when there are a lot of children together playing in the blocks, this may be very difficult for them to filter out the noise, the bodies around. So this is another area that impacts on their ability to focus on the activity at hand. So why teach play skills? And what is our role in teaching the play skills? And why would it not be easier to just let them do their own thing, make their own choices, stay within their comfort zone? During those early years of preschool where the environment is totally focused on play, we do have the greatest opportunity to build these skills. As we know, it is critical for social success. It increases their ability to observe the social behaviour of others and to share toys and materials. It facilitates practice of newly acquired skills in a safe and supportive environment. It will eventually decrease social isolation. And it supports the connection between feelings and thoughts with events, enabling them to express their emotions. It develops cause and effect thinking, and it certainly develops that theory of mind, the you and me thinking. It is actually interesting to note what research is telling us about what peers value. So the research has told us that from 4 years to 7 years of age, they value peers that are able to play, to share, to care, interesting to play dress-ups with, and they'll get a hug from them. And we know that the peers' connection is probably very reliant on lots of these things, and many of the children with autism do not display many of these behaviours, so therefore can be quite isolated. As they get older, in that age group between 8 and 10, they are focusing on different things. They want their peers to be nice, trustworthy, like to help others, and again, the sharing. So when we think of children on the spectrum, many of these abilities would be challenging for them, which would mean their connections to others would be significantly compromised through isolation or even avoidance. So what is the adult role in teaching play skills? The research provides us with the why. It is so critical for us to become their first play partners. As we are predictable, we can adapt, we don't move on, we are not driven by the next play sequence or toy, which typically developing young children will be. Therefore, it is easy for the child with autism to avoid, isolate, or even create conflict. So our ability to be predictable with our interactions increases their communicative effectiveness with adults. We also know that their social responsiveness increases when they can predict the sequence of the events in the play activity. We can provide that, whereas young peers can be very unpredictable and change things even slightly, which can then increase the child's anxiety and the connection to what is going on. At this point, I'd like you to think of a child you are currently working with and note where you think their play skills are at. Make a short list of what you've observed. Ask yourself, are you seeing static or dynamic play? What is actually occurring?